gets out of control.
Okay, welcome everybody to another edition of Drunk Agile against all of our better judgment, and by all of our, I mean mine. We invited some Scrum folks, although it's probably unfair to maybe pigeonhole you just as Scrum folks, but some good friends of mine, people I met through the PST community. Of course, we're talking about Chad and Jeff here. Chad, Jeff, welcome.
Hello.
And then there's Prateek there too, but we don't like to talk about him.
Yeah, but we do have
the star of the show who is hiding.
She's
She ran away. Yeah. Hi, Nisha.
Yeah.
She's trust us. She is there. First things first. Most important thing. What are we drinking? Who wants to go? Who wants to talk about what they're drinking?
I'll start. I've got a little J. Henry and Sons. It's a local farm just north of me here in Madison. They grow all of their own products there. So they grow the corn, the rye, the barley, all the good stuff there. And then they distill it there at ages 5 years or more. Everything does. They work in small batches. And one of the really cool things about them is they kind of have their own corn blend that they've grown throughout the years. It's a red corn that they use in it. It gives a unique taste. And then because we have these extreme weather conditions here in Wisconsin, they age everything in like these open type barn where like wind blows through it and stuff. And so you get like, 100+ degree temperatures and like -30 degree temperatures. So there's a lot of expanding and contracting with the barrel, which gives it another very unique taste. So yeah, it's an interesting area that we can go, tour right north of my house here. So that's what I brought today.
So you'll be sending us a bottle in the mail? Is that what I'm hearing?
Christmas presents. Yeah.
It's either that or a field trip.
It is one of those ones you gotta like go up to the counter and be like, hey, do you have any of that J. Henry and Sons? And they're like, no shipments this week. Sorry, like it's limited. So
we could do a smash and grab job next time in Wisconsin. That's no problem. Chad, you said
all right. I don't know what the rules are. I might be breaking them because I'm not drinking a whiskey, but I do have something local to Wisconsin. This is Third Space Brewing Company's Midwest Pale Ale, and it's Happy Place. And I just think it's a good example of marketing at its best because I think I drink it because it's called Happy Place, and I think it puts you in a happy place. So, but it is really good. Bright hop aromas meet notes of citrus and tropical fruit in this supremely balanced hoppy pale ale. So there you go.
Right, we need to go hire their marketing team.
Yeah.
Prateek, was that an old fashioned I spied?
It is an old fashioned. I picked up this. This is something, Dan, you might need to come over at some point. Templeton Rye that's actually finished in Oloroso sherry casks. So it's got a little of the rye spice and a sherry finish. So it goes nicely in an old fashioned. Yeah.
Right on. Save the best for last then. I went with the Glengarry. I don't know if we've done the Glengarry on Drunk Agile. I'm not sure, but this is a virgin oak. It's I think Missouri oak first fill barrels, 61%. So I know Prateek's not a fan, but I have to say the more I drink this, the more it grows on me. So big fan of the Glengarry stuff. So anyway, welcome Chad and Jeff as our guests. You get to pick the first topic. So. Shoot. Oh, cheers, everybody, by the way. Cheers.
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 Yeah, we started drinking before.
Yeah.
Go ahead, hit us.
All right. So
go ahead, Jeff.
Some people like to take easy topics, and I always choose to go the hard way. So I'm going to pick a hard topic for us today. So global supply chain and some similarities to it to product development. We're all in the product development world. We all see what's happening in the global supply chain. Chad's building a house right now, and he's feeling it hardcore right now. So let's dive into it. So just for historical sakes, maybe I can just keep this up, like in case someone listens to this a few years from now, they're like, what are they even talking about? So what's happened is over COVID, people have spent less money on restaurants. They spent less money on going places and traveling, and they've been buying a lot more products. So the demand's higher. At the same time, some people aren't working as much. There's different government subsidy programs. And so there's less people doing the work. So there's less capacity, more demand for for tangible products that get shipped around the world. And what's happening now is the ports are backing up. There are ships just waiting days, weeks to get unloaded. And so they're just sitting there waiting. And so people can't get what they want. And orders keep coming in and they keep taking them. And so let's start there.
There's also a shortage of skill set if you think about this as an analogy to a team, right? Because there are literally not enough truck drivers to unload at the ports, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an interesting take on it as well. So here's what if we paint this scenario? There's a meeting of world leaders and they get together and they stumble upon their YouTube recommendations. They stumble upon this podcast called Drunk Agile, and they're always talking about just look at aging. Everything's just about aging. Start with aging. And so they bring you into a room. They bring us into a room and they say, help us solve this problem. Is it aging? Do we just work on the oldest items first at the port? Like, I'm curious what we would tell them.
I can give them step one. Step one, pour yourself some whiskey.
Because you could solve all the world's problems that way. Right?
So, and to repaint that scenario, we're talking about a whole bunch of, a lot of demand, a lot of supply, and some bottlenecks and skill shortages in the middle. That's really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Dan?
So the problem, I mean, so can we start with looking at aging? Technically, yes, but I think all of us, especially the way that you frame the problem, all of us already know that aging is probably going to be a problem anyway. And I think this is something that we alluded to in the podcast with Johanna. I think we talked about this, but if we were to start with the aging problem, if we were to start with looking at aging, there's really two fundamental ways to get things to not age. Did we talk? Can't remember if we talked about this.
I don't remember if we did. We probably did.
Yeah. But,
we should refresh people on that, because let people fall into this trap all the time.
Yeah. So what's to prevent something from aging? Prateek, what's one of the first best ways to prevent something from aging?
The best way? Don't start it.
So first and foremost is don't start it. So the reason ships are, in Dan's humble opinion, the reason ships are piling up, outside of Long Beach, outside of whatever, is because China or whomever is just sending them out. Doesn't matter what's happening downstream, right? Hey, I got a ship full of stuff. I'm just going to send it. I don't care if it's got to go and it's got to wait, right? That's number one. And then the second one, Chad, is I think the thing that you were alluding to before, which is, what's the second way to get stuff to not age?
Finish it.
Right? But Chad, that's what you're saying. I mean, we don't have people to unload it to get this stuff delivered. So, I mean, I think by looking at aging, I think we've uncovered, fundamentally the two big problems with the supply chain here, which by the way is kind of shows the Achilles heel of a just-in-time process, right? Our global supply chain has been built on just-in-time, and I would argue rightfully so. It's just whenever there's a major shock to the system, just-in-time don't work so good, anymore when we start uncovering these types of constraints. So anyway, I don't want to talk too much. I wanted to start it off there.
I'll push back a little bit. It's not so much that it's just in time; it's that it's not a pull system, right? They don't really pull. Well, I mean, there's nothing saying like, hey, stop, you can't start anything. We've got too much sitting here. We have too much in progress. There's nothing that's slowing that down, right? So yeah, the order comes in and we pull it, we start working on it, but then we just ship it and it just sits there and waits wherever it is in the queue, in whatever queue.
Yep,
right?
Fire and forget, yeah.
Yep, fire and forget. And we work in really big batches, right? Like huge shipping containers coming in. You see these pictures of these just monster mountains full of shipping containers, right? And you take one at a time per semi. So that's a problem.
But yeah, exactly. Because I think we talked about this example before. Because in the airline industry, if an airport gets shut down because of weather, say Chicago O'Hare gets shut down because of weather, one of the very first things they do is they call out to all the feeder airports and say, those flights don't get to take off, right? There's a ground stoppage, until Chicago opens up again. You're right. So Jeff, you're right. There's nothing like, as far as I know, there's nothing like that in the shipping world. Maybe there is. I don't know, but it's not. If there is, it doesn't seem to be working right now, right?
So this makes me think of another topic that Jeff and I were talking about yesterday. So how much control you have over the overall workflow you are a part of, how directly correlated does everyone think that is to predictability metrics, how effective we are, basically how smooth of a workflow we can create, how optimized we can create it? And the example I'm even thinking of, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and there was a company that make boots, and they're all made in the USA completely by hand. And it was this dying trade, right? That everything was done by machines, and it was expensive, right? It was more expensive a few years ago to the competition that did everything through outsourced solutions, right? Because it was cheaper then. But now, because of a crisis, the costs of that outsourced solution are rising, and they're about equal. But the company that's in the US, they paid more long term, but they have flow now. They can still deliver the product because they don't have they haven't outsourced their control, right? Of what so I'm just curious, I think about this all the time when I'm working with clients and they choose a vendor solution, or the worst case scenario, not just a buy, but a buy and customize solution with a vendor, which just sets you down a terrible path. So I'm just curious, how important, I think I know the answer, but how important is control in the workflows that we're trying to optimize?
I'm gonna steal this from Klaus Leopold. He loves to talk about when you optimize the subsystem, you sub-optimize the broader system, and that's really what's happening there. It's like we're optimizing for this little thing, and we're pushing this out. And hey, look, we're so agile right here. This thing is moving so fast. Meanwhile, the broader system is sub-optimized, and I don't think it's a 1 and 0. I think there's a trade-off, but my personal trade-offs would be more towards the broader system than the subsystem.
Yeah.
What do you think, Dan?
I'm trying to understand what Prateek said there. I'm not even sure he answered the question. Because
I heard a systems thinking answer anchored in optimize the whole, not the individual parts. That's what I heard.
I got it.
That's not what I heard.
I must be drinking the right stuff.
Maybe, yeah. But
he's in his happy place.
But that doesn't. Yeah, exactly. You could agree to anything. But that, I don't know. But I guess maybe I heard the question wrong, because I thought Chad, you were talking more about the trade-off between effectiveness, efficiency, predictability in terms of control. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think optimizing a workflow is being strategic with how you utilize everything you have, your money, your resources, your skills you have within your organization. And I'm trying to bring the bigger problem we started with, global supply chain, right, back to an analogy for maybe knowledge work teams that most of us work with. So how do we, I guess, how do you navigate that conversation to help someone see how important, if you outsource your strategy or your optimization of your workflow, don't expect to see the amazing results that optimizing a workflow brings, right? I think control is a key part. And when you choose to work with other entities outside of your core organization, you are making a huge trade-off unless you choose those entities like very carefully, right? And I don't know, maybe we all probably have some examples from our experience where we've seen this play out. But what's the quick fix, or what's the way we can help organizations avoid going down that path?
Well, and this is why. So Prateek steals from Klaus. I'm going to steal from Don Reinertsen. This is why I love channeling my inner Don Reinertsen. And again, if you don't know who Don Reinertsen is, then I want you to just to hit stop right now, and you're not allowed to listen to our podcast anymore. But Don loves to frame this stuff in terms of economic frameworks. He always talks about flow in terms of an economic framework. And the reason that I love the word economics is the definition of economics is, how do you make decisions in the face of scarce resources, in the face of scarcity? That's really what economics is all about. And I think this is what you're talking about, Chad, is when we talk about control and we talk about predictability. Probably when we talk about predictability, it's like how much variability in cycle time are we willing to accept, and how much are we willing to pay or to not pay to have, you know, a wider range of variability in cycle time or a lesser range of variability in cycle time. And I think that's what you're saying. And I think what people need to understand is there is that trade-off, you know, is like if you're going to outsource, yes, you might be paying less in terms of, you know, immediate costs, you know, labor or, you know, whatever. But those costs are going to show their head somewhere else in terms of, you know, decreased predictability or, you know, not a good ability to, that's how we say agility, to recover from shocks to the system, like what we're seeing right now. So I mean, I think that, I mean, that's what I would like to talk about is you need to understand you're whether you know it or not, you're making an economic trade-off here. Do you understand that? Right.
Yeah. I mean, a real example, because Jeff mentioned that I'm going through a house renovation. So we're looking for countertops, right? And they were natural stone countertops. And one supplier I worked with in the area had a shipment get damaged. It was the standard response now. We don't know when the next shipment is coming. It comes from Brazil. It's somewhere stuck on a ship. I went to another countertop place down the road. They had a shipment arriving next week. We went and looked at it. It was a beautiful countertop. We selected it. And I asked them, I was like, you know, your competitor down the road, they were having they were saying they didn't even know when they were going to get any more countertops. And here's the answer. And I think he was maybe one of the owners. He told me, he said, we've had our same suppliers for decades. And so we just have he basically said, we have our workflow optimized. That's what I heard, right? He didn't use those words. And I was fascinated by it, right? Because it was like, of course, he has not outsourced. He knows his suppliers. It's that Toyota way of thinking, right? Toyota always wanted to make their suppliers successful so they could be successful, optimizing the whole system, right? So it makes me think again back to, these are the big, maybe traditional supply chain manufacturing environments, but it's so relevant in knowledge work too. I think it's just harder in concept to get to sell decision makers in organizations on it, because you can't walk the factory floor or look at the supply, you know, the purchase orders and see how messed up things are. It's almost hidden to us because knowledge work is a little bit more, well, it's hidden. You can't just walk the factory floor. I don't know. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, the only cost they see is usually like wage cost. And so they're like, well, if that's the only thing I see, that's what I'm going to try and control, right?
Yeah.
Which again,
so if we had to counteract that with, right, because decision making a lot of times is made on cost. Well, I can see the cost, so when I can see data easily, I make a decision on that. Mm-hmm. Is there anything we have, right? I mean, I could look at ActionableAgile, and there's a lot there, but is there a compelling piece of data, empirical evidence, Dan, on something that we could show those decision makers to really convince them not to go down that path of losing control of their workflow? Anybody?
Well, I guess I would say that those aren't the droids you're looking for when you're trying to optimize for cost. What you really want to be optimizing for is time. Like, you can never get time back. And so I just think that's the answer. So optimize for time. What are we talking about? Cycle time. Let's think about Little's Law. Let's think about our flow, and let's talk about making decisions in small batches, and then having that type of thing. Because like you're saying, as you outsource this out, you're doing bigger batch planning, and you're unable to respond to smaller changes that are happening around you, because you need to prove the value of whatever is happening and justify the cost of it. Now you put things into very, very big batches that you're working on, which, also slows the delivery of the things that are probably have really high margins. So I think this is a whole cascading effect of, some fallacies that we might have on what we think is really valuable, but isn't.
Yeah, and to pull this all the way back to aging, what we were talking about earlier.
Here we go.
Yeah,
we're gonna go down the aging path. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, aging is the leading indicator. I mean, before you get to cycle time, aging is the leading indicator. To say, hey, we made this decision, and all of a sudden, looks like things are taking longer. It won't tell you immediately based on, hey, future risk and this is what will happen. But as soon as it starts showing up, you have an earlier opportunity to change decisions. And Jeff, to your point, if you make small batch decisions, they're easier to change rather than big batch decisions where we're taking this huge big bet and now people's careers are on the line of, hey, you made this big bet, you're going to make it work, as opposed to let's make these small bets. And then if aging changes, we can revert it and we can go. It's that whole thing of, if you've got a continuous delivery pipeline and you've shipped only 2 lines of code, it's easier to revert rather than if you had 3 modules of code that you shipped, and then it was much harder to revert.
Yeah, I'm going to throw the gauntlet down to the Agile community, because honestly, this is something that I've been expecting Agile to quote unquote solve for probably 15 years, 20 years, and that is the financials of it, right? The financial side of Agile, the cost side of Agile, the accounting side of Agile, whatever you want to call it. Because so many times we, how much Prateek and I hate to talk about people, but in Agile, that's all it seems all we talk about is people. Who cares about people, right? Right? Nobody's giving me an amen. Dogs. That's all we care about.
I'm just waiting to see where you're going here, Dan. We're gonna
Who cares? Well, that's right, Jeff. I think what's your name of your company is what? Humane Consulting.
Humane Consulting, right? So
who cares? But
who cares about people?
But my point is, I think this is an area that's ripe with opportunity. And I just don't know why this has never really been taken seriously. In the Agile community. Like I said, to me. Maybe I've said this 1,000 times. I'll let you say something Prateek here in a second. Maybe I don't know if I've said this on Drunk Agile or not, but for me, 80% of corporate dysfunction comes down to its accounting practices, and pretty much 100% of its accounting practices come down to how it's taxed. So but Agile needs to play nicely in that world, and I don't think it does. In its current form, and I think there's a solution out there. I'm not saying I have the solution, but I think there's a solution there.
Yeah. At the end of the day, an organization, a company's objective and its key result is how do we make the most amount of money? Now, Agile knows that you make the most amount of money by treating your people right and letting them be awesome. But when it comes to decision time, people will revert to what makes us the most amount of money, not what makes our people awesome. So that, to double down on Dan's point, it's how do we reframe that conversation around profitability and money with how does creating a system that helps people do their best work lead to it.
I know one thing Jeff and I always highlight when we're working with decision makers is the cost of an iteration, right? Whether you're using sprints and Scrum, or whether you're just, you're time boxing anything, or just even if you're not, you're single piece flow and you just want to add it up by a month. What does it cost for that team on the payroll, right? That's a starting point. You're going to have licensing costs. You're going to have all the other stuff that you have to pay. You can have a slushy budget fund for that and figure that out. But labor of your teams, if you're not forming stable cross-functional teams, then we've got to go all the way back to the beginning, right? Because it's like if we're doing some resource allocation game, there's just anti-pattern everywhere. So start by stopping doing that and form a stable team. But when you have a stable team formed, the budgeting conversation, it's so simple. You add up how much money goes out the door every cycle, right? This is how much we paid in the last month for that team. Okay, what did they deliver? Oh, they only release 4 times a year? Okay, so it's literally like every quarter you go out in the parking lot and you pour the money into a barrel and light the match. And then you get nothing for that in not most, but a lot of organizations. You get very little for that payroll cost. Now, I care deeply about people inside of organizations, right? But I also understand as a business owner that the goal of the existence of an organization isn't to employ people. It's to further whatever the cause mission is. So there is an agreement between employer and employee. And when that ROI is really, really bad, then something has to change, right? And so I think, aging is, I like aging in that when I'm trying to convince a client not to outsource a solution and give up that control, I try to tell them, how long do you need to give a vendor before you realize they can't deliver, right? I think you give them 2 months. A quarter is generous. And if they haven't delivered anything in that time frame, get them out of there. Write your contracts in a way that you can easily move on, and you test the waters. Just like Silicon Valley tests products, you test which vendors are actually agile or the ones that just have good sales teams that say agile is a buzzword. Yeah, we're agile. So anyway, sorry, I'm getting off on a little rant here, but I think it is so important to try to help those decision makers see the long-term decision to make, not the short-term, because the short-term is always, I see the cost of this and I just make a cost decision, not a value decision.
And I'll go back to Dan's point of the accounting practices, and it's because we have projects. Because we have projects, we look at work as cost center. It costs the organization this much to do this feature, to do this thing. But if we flip it and to a product mindset, and now you're a profit center and you have everything you need to deliver value to the organization, it's a different conversation, very similar to what Chad just said, where we're looking at run rate for the team. We're looking at the profit margins that they're making, and like we're balancing things and saying, do we scale? Do we add more people? Do we not? Do we spend more money on marketing? What are we doing here? And it's just a different way of looking at it than what I think a lot of organizations are doing today.
Or yes, and it's even worse than that, because to Jeff's point, or sorry, to Chad's point, if I can outsource all this stuff, maybe I can capitalize that cost immediately and depreciate it immediately, rather than making it an operational cost by hiring Chad as an employee. And now, maybe I reap that tax benefit, maybe I don't, whatever. And that's where but they're you're right. These are not the droids you were looking for, Jeff. I think
and
you're
that's
exactly
so
right.
I mean that rings so true to me too, because when I was in project management, right, we were capitalizing the labor on these multi-million-dollar projects, and it's like that was more important than the value going out the door. Let's make sure we account for it and save it somehow in the capitalization of the labor. And it was just so backwards because years would go by where projects were in requirements analysis for years, multiple years of requirements analysis, right? Meanwhile, me as a little boat rocker change agent, I was spinning up scrum teams in stealth mode and trying to trick everybody, taking demos to steering committee meetings and things like that.
I swear to God, I didn't put that software into production. I swear to God, that wasn't me.
My favorite part about all that accounting, sometimes was it's how accurate it was. It's down to the cent. This is how much money we spent on this, and we had no idea what value we got out of it.
Yeah, value. It's because it's so hard to quantify, right? And it's like, what is the quote? There's some leadership quote out there, like, I don't know, just because it's easy to measure doesn't mean you should, or something. I can't remember where it comes from, but it's so true. Even in just decision-making process, we always fall. I think human beings are just, we're prone to making decisions with the easy stuff, the low-hanging fruit in front of us, because there's no uncertainty there, right? And I think good decision makers make decisions like head on into uncertainty. They know they don't have all the information, but they make a decision anyway off of the conceptual hunch, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I'm along those lines. I'm a fundamental believer that anybody who's ever in a management position needs to have either, well, probably both. I was going to say either, but probably both. Started a company with your own money, but I think more importantly, made a payroll with your own money, and then I think these kinds of conversations become much more interesting, right? If it's just numbers on a spreadsheet somewhere, who really cares? But I think most of us in this room have done that, and I think that's why I think we bring the perspective to this, that we do. So
here's to you, Dan, because when I met you in a bar in Tampa, it sounds kind of like a crazy story, but
wait, we can edit that, right? We can.
Hold on.
It's not that crazy, but when I met you in a bar in Tampa, right, at a Scrum.org event, I believe it was one of your first Scrum.org events. Maybe the
It was
first.
actually, I think, my very first one. It was the very
Yeah.
first one. Yeah.
Yeah. So you convinced me to quit my job and start my company, right? I mean, you were one of many. I don't want to give you all the credit, but you get some credit, right? You made me walk the plank, and you sort of nudged me off. Like, you were sort of like, what are you waiting for? Why wouldn't you quit your job, right? And so anyway, maybe you did that very recklessly, but I thank you for that, because it was a very good decision.
Well, I'm glad you got a good result, right? And so that's right, because yeah, maybe I get to share the accolades, but maybe I probably would have absorbed all the blame if it had not gone.
Yeah.
It's called resulting.
Yeah, resulting.
This one worked
That's
out well for you. There's probably like
right.
25 other people in your life that you've told to do the same thing, and it's
They're
not going
right
so
outside my
well.
front
I don't
door
know.
right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, throwing
Yeah,
stuff at them.
I do want to bring this back to a bunch of what we're talking about today is essentially risk management. That's and I'm totally stealing from Dan here. It's essentially risk management, and that's the thing that Agile doesn't. And again, stealing from Dan, Agile doesn't explicitly talk about, but that's what it's all about. How do we manage risk? Because all these decisions have risk in them, and how do we effectively manage it? That's really what we're talking about.
Right, and that if I can give a shout out to Scrum, to me, that's where the Scrum framework shines. Is, you know, we can nitpick about different parts of the Scrum guide that we like or we don't like, but really it's designed to be a framework to manage risk, right? You know, whether you like the events, whether you like the roles, whether you like the accountabilities. I don't really care, but think about it from a flow risk management, perspective. And that's really what it's out there. Yes, is everything always applicable in 100% of context? Probably not, but that's why it's a framework, right? Anyway, so that's.
Yeah. Jeff, do you know what I'm thinking right now as far as mindset we always talk about?
I know. Tell me more.
The shift that we're always.
We're always talking about people moving from an analysis mindset to a feedback mindset. Like when they're making a switch into Agile, a lot of people do Agile in name only, right? They don't actually switch that. They just still do the analysis phase and design and etc. And I think you're right. That is about risk management. And I don't know, you had me thinking more and more. I don't remember where I heard it, but it's like we want people to be able to make decisions based with 70% of the information or 60% of the information, not 90 or 95, because that last little bit is really, really expensive. And so, and it's not such a big deal if we're working in small batches and doing what we talk about all the time, and things aren't aging very long and we're learning really fast. Like we're going to exponentially be able to make better decisions more frequently. And I think that's why a lot of leaders supposedly why they get paid more money is they're better at making decisions. They have better judgment. That's what they're supposed to have. But I think the way we work as Agilists, we mitigate the risk by the way we work, not by so much the decision making. I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Well, and this is kind of back to our Ditka talk. It's like in the return on investment equation, you're never really going to be sure about the return, but you can always control the investment. Mm-hmm. So if you keep the investment small, you can adjust very easily.
Yep. I love that mindset. I know everybody hates sports analogies when we talk about Agile, but I was actually, reading an article today about the Lakers' latest win, their win last night. But there's a great quote. I wish I had the article handy, but there's a great quote by LeBron James, and because we talk a lot about professionalism in our industry, and I always talk about professionalism as showing up every day thinking that you can get better. Right. To me, that's the essence of professionalism. That's it. I don't care about anything else. Do you believe, when do you, Jeff, to your point, do you come to work with a mindset that I think I can get better today? And there was a great quote from LeBron James. He was talking about that. He's like, I don't care what our record is right now. It's like, as a team, are we showing up every day thinking that we can get better? And are we trusting that process that we think that we can get better? That's all I care about. And, say what you will about, I'm not saying I'm a LeBron James fan or whatever, but that's, if ask any professional in any sport, that's, if the Michael Jordan Last Dance, I mean, he talks about that too. Serena Williams, when you ever see anything from her, they're always talking about, I want to show up because I believe I can get better. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think that directly correlates to what we just talked about with the analysis mindset versus feedback mindset. I think people who take that mindset of continuous improvement and really stress the word continuous, right? This is why I'm going to go on a side rant here, but this is why I always nitpick at like the phrase agile adoption or agile transformation, because it implies that there's some project that ends and you're like, you did it, right? No, you didn't do it. The world didn't stop spinning faster every second into the future, right? So it's continuous. We never can stop improving and optimizing. Anyway, so I think that feedback mindset is so important for people who take that professionalism seriously, though, right? Because if you're stuck in the trap, I guess, I think it is maybe a human brain trap that you can analyze your way into the future, it's not going to work for you, especially in today's world. Like sometimes I like to take a step back. We are in the middle of a technological revolution. Like this is a crazy time period. I mean, just think back to the early 2000s before, not that I want to give all the credit to the iPhone, but like just before things really took off the internet wise, right? Like video content like we're about to put out here was just so easy to put out. It's crazy where we're at right now. And if you are still hanging on to an analysis mindset where you think you can analyze your way into the future, you are going to, if you're an insurance company, you'll die a slow death because you probably have a lot of money stored everywhere. But if you're a company that's operating on thin margins already, you're going to die a quick death. You need to shift to a feedback mindset. I don't even know who I'm talking to right now, but I'm thinking of all the companies that need to hear this message maybe. Thoughts on that?
Yes.
I'd like to see somebody draw an outline of the topics we've covered in this.
Oh yeah,
It feels like we've gone everywhere, but
just look at aging, manage risk. We're done.
Yeah, there you go. But that's why we're drinking for me. You know, that's so yeah.
No, you reminded me, Chad, there I just want to throw one quick thing in there. Like, this is just something I run my company by. It's like, do the hard thing today so tomorrow is easier, but tomorrow never comes because it's always today. So, but if you don't, then you do the easy thing today, then the hard thing comes tomorrow, and that will come. So when you're thinking about continuous learning, when you're thinking about how you're building your product, when you're thinking about how to slice things thinner, when you're thinking about aging, do that hard thing, like take that stand, work towards that improvement. Like that would be my nudge I would give to all the listeners out there.
Prateek, I think we give Jeff the last word there. That's what I think.
Yeah, well, I thought Chad had something.
Yeah, Chad.
Okay, as long as it's not Prateek. That's as long as it's not.
Okay, here's what we're gonna.
Uh-oh. Yes. Yes.
We're just gonna do something real brief here. And then we had a nice ending, so if this is absolutely terrible, we'll just timestamp it and cut it out, right? But
no.
You think
I like how you guys are just like, no, we'll keep it in.
You think
feedback mindset here, Chad, not analysis.
Yeah, here we go. Here's some feedback. All right, so here's what I'm gonna. I have just a snippet of a song that I'm gonna share. It's appropriate because the name of the parody song is Single Piece Flow. So I think it's appropriate for this podcast. Just give me 1 second. I just have to switch my audio interface to make sure this sounds halfway decent.
1 second, I gotta.
Are you drinking that neat, Prateek? Oh no, you had ice. You had ice.
I have ice. I had this in the old fashioned, but now I'm just on ice.
Okay, so you should still be able to hear me. Yes?
Yep, can hear you.
And now you should be able to hear a guitar strum. Okay. That means I'm ready. So I'll just be the beer I introduced. I discovered that brewery when my brother-in-law and I went to we were actually going to a Weezer concert. A couple of old guys going to a Weezer concert. And we needed to get a bite to eat, and we were just walking down the street, and we walked into this brewery, and that's how I discovered the Third Space Brewery that I'm drinking the beer tonight. So anyway, this is a parody song of one of Weezer's debut album in 1994, the Blue Album, Say It Ain't So, okay? You know, we all know the song Say It Ain't So. It's like... maybe not. But that's Say It Ain't So, oh, that song, okay? But this is my parody version called Single Piece Flow. I'll just do the chorus, no verses tonight. Sorry. Here we go. Ready? Chorus. Single piece flow. Whoa, whoa. Your process is out of control. Single piece flow. Whoa, whoa. Change intake from push to pull. That's it. That's all I have.
And welcome to the new Drunk Agile theme song for forever and ever and ever.
Just put it on a loop. Maybe just that on a loop.
Yeah.
Expect that one to maybe I'll finish the lyrics for that one, and that'll drop in 2022. We'll see.
Oh, it's dropping in a week.
Yeah.
Maybe next week, because I think it's dropping next week.
So I guess
to everyone.
Shameless plug, since I totally stole this stage here at the end. If people are interested in my ridiculously silly Agile parody songs, you can check out my YouTube channel, which I don't really have a great handle for. But if you search my name, Chad Beyer,
we'll link it. We'll link it.
okay, great. We'll link it.
Yeah. No.
Maybe I know if I can look it up, if I can be bothered to Google it.
This was a blast. I had so much fun.
Yes,
This was
yeah,
cool.
like I said, world leaders. I hope the world leaders were listening. I hope they, because we just solved world hunger.
Just did. Aging and risk management. Done.
Yeah.
Done.
Special thanks to Chad and Jeff for being our guests tonight. Thank you so much. The invitation is always there. Whenever you want to come, when you have any hard questions that you don't want answers to, just look us up. So for Chad, for Jeff, for Prateek, but most importantly for the star of the show, Nisha, who has made an appearance there in the background. Hi, Nisha. I haven't seen her in forever. I need to come over and see Nisha. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this special edition of Drunk Agile. Keep drinking, and we will see you in the next episode. Good night, everybody.